right. I'm going to throw you my opening question, which is always a little bit off topic of what we're going to talk about in the middle. So if anybody has any questions, comments, throw them in and we'll get to those as well. So my opening question is, do you have a favorite free writing prompt that you use personally, and what is it?
Oh gosh.
We've been talking a lot about journaling and kind of using our journals in the last couple episodes. So it made me think about like, do you have something that you like to use as a prompt to just get yourself going?
Mm, well, I was going to say what I do personally is I go back to my journal because I've got my notes in there and those get my wheels spinning, you know. And so I kind of make my own prompts as I go that way. So like right now I've got a character who's got anorexia nervosa, but it's the 1920s. So, I mean, the diagnosis existed, but it wasn't treated the way it is today, and it wasn't talked about the way it is today, and such very different
Hmm.
world. And so I knew I had a scene with her coming up where something happens that triggers her. It's um it's more of like I think it's called intermittent, or it's kind of a circumstantial anorexia. It's not continuous and chronic the way we typically think of it is. So she's triggered and then she goes into those behaviors again. So I went to my journal and I'm just asking myself, how is she going to respond to this stress that just happened? What is that going to look like? And then that gives me the ideas that go into the scene, right? So that becomes my own writing prompt. Like I know my research showed that obsessive compulsive personality, not full on disorder, is a common trait with people with anorexia nervosa. So I'm like, okay, when they're in the dining hall, she's not going to eat, but she's going to be like fidgeting with her utensils and positioning things around her plate and stuff like that. Um, when I'm teaching, I often develop writing prompts, excuse me, on the fly because I'm in conversation with my students. And so I know
Hmm.
what issue we're trying to deal with. And I also know what their stories are about, what kind of characters they're dealing with, and what their character arcs are. So instead of having like a ready go to prompt, I like to create prompts based on either my circumstances or my students' circumstances. So I don't know, that might be kind of a disappointing answer because I didn't just give you a prompt to go run with.
No, I love that. I love that idea of catering your prompts to your situation and your circumstance. Good. I often think of free writing prompts as kind of like the easy way in the door, right? It's like I can write about this for 15 minutes, even if I don't have anything else time wise or, the capacity to sit down and try and draft a chapter or revise something. But I can sit and do this for 15 minutes. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think prompts are really good for that. If I weren't in the middle of a project, if I'd taken time off of writing or life had gotten in the way, then turning to a book of prompts or the internet or, um, I like Natalie Goldberg's Writing Down the Bones a lot. That's a great way to kind of jumpstart creativity. And I do think that um, taking prompts that your initial reaction to is negative is a great way to kind of put yourself in a corner. When I was in school, I had to write to whatever my professor told me to, whatever that assignment was, and I didn't always like it. And sometimes I sat down thinking, this sucks. Why did that professor tell me to do this? And it was good. It's good for us to do that. And I had some great stories come out of those. So I think
awesome.
Kristen has
Kristen
a
has a
comment there.
suggestion there. Yeah. You're giving me names I don't want to mess up here, Kristen. It's like the third one you've done where I feel bad. Zalika Joud? I don't know. Anyway, but yes, Jouad for that. Those on video gives some great ones. So that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, it's always good to have warm-up activity. You get me. Okay.
I just let
Um,
Catherine take that too.
I know, right? Did you see her just like duck out? She was like, "Yep, Kristen has a comment." That's awesome.
Yep.
Just because we can't pronounce their names doesn't mean they're not worth checking out. So, okay. Topic. Are you ready to talk about a specific piece of craft?
Sure.
All right. I
Why not?
am
So I'm here.
awesome. I want to talk a little bit about kind of a backbone of craft today, where we're going to talk about crafting a character arc. Um, so, uh, softball question to begin with: what is the character arc,
Okay.
and why is it important in your story? And also, really quick, Kristen says she's married to John Batiste and writes about her medical struggles. So that's a little bit of clarification on the previous author. Thank you, Kristen.
That makes more
Okay.
sense because I saw that in Red Magical Struggles.
uh, struggles with magic.
Could be. You never know. Okay. Also, I think we have a new join.
Yes. Yes.
Nelson, maybe? So,
Welcome.
yeah, welcome and throw comments and questions in the chat at any time. Okay, so what is a character arc?
And why is
It's
it important?
basically, yeah, so it's basically your character's journey from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. And that journey involves change. So some sort of character evolution. And it matters because our protagonist is the heart of our story. The protagonist is the reader's vehicle through which we experience the plot and everything else that's happening in the story world. And so, as a reader, we are living vicariously through the protagonist taking this journey. And whatever that character's change is, we get to also experience that change. So it can be very deep and moving. Doesn't have to be, but that's kind of a right.
Yeah.
So yeah, and our protagonist goes through all of the events of the plot. Lots of struggle, lots of challenge, right? Lots of conflict, crisis, agency, choices to make, repercussions for making all of these choices. And so, if your character doesn't have an arc accompanying your plot arc, if your character is the same at the end of the journey after going through all of those situations, then that's kind of a head scratcher, right? And we're likely to not believe it, enjoy the story less, feel that there's less of a payoff, less of a reward as a reader. So there are at least a couple, maybe a few different layers there to what I just said about what a character arc is and why it matters. And of course, you can have an arcless protagonist. Let's just leave that aside for now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yes, welcome to people who are just joining. Catherine, welcome them. I'm going to dip off for
Yes,
1 second.
absolutely. Yeah. So I saw Michael and Virgil come in. Welcome, guys. And Nelson, that is great. So if you have any questions about what you're writing, just feel free to drop it in. It does not have to apply to the topic that I have brought. We will answer, Alida will answer any and all questions. I just bring something so that we make sure we're talking craft for you guys.
Right.
Kristen,
And if you
that's a
just
huge problem
joined,
for me. So
I have a head cold, so apologies for the
for
snuffling
Alida,
and things.
she's recovering, but she's
That's
here
not
for you
normal.
guys.
Yeah. This is not my normal stuff. So,
Okay, so I want to ask then, I'm going to kind of skip around because I had these questions in a different order, but since Kristen's talking about story arc being a problem, what kind of like common problems with this character arc and weaving it into the story arc do you find as an editor and a writing coach?
mm. So one, well, okay. two things for sure. One is agency. The other one is nicey nice. And that's my own little
Mm,
label there. Nicey nice. So let's do nicey nice first. A lot of writers either like their protagonist too much and they don't want to sufficiently escalate the stakes and tension for their character. And I don't mean this in an external artificial way, like, I don't know who said this, where it came from, but you've all heard the saying, put them in a tree and then throw rocks at them and then set the tree on fire, that kind of thing. I don't mean that. I mean, you're telling a story and you've got a series of events, you've got a setting with different props, different opportunities to make things happen. You've got an antagonist, you've got choices that are building one on the other toward that climax. And so it's right there on the page. It's like, this should be happening next, not because someone said set a tree on fire, but because this is what you've already put on the page and been building to. And then the writers miss that opportunity because that
mm,
thing that is so apparent to me working with them, seeing all of the scaffolding on the page, seeing all of these elements building, it's kind of like writers put on blinders because it would be too harsh or too mean to do that to the character. Or the other reason this happens is because the writer's not thinking clearly enough in story terms. The writer is thinking in real life terms. And in real life,
mm,
most people are reasonable and things de escalate before they go too far. But in story, we want things to be big. We want things to be dramatic, even exaggerated sometimes without being melodramatic or hyperbolic, right? And so for those two reasons, I see a lot of people being too nice. They're just being nicey nice
mhm,
to their to their characters. And then it doesn't play out and they're missing opportunities within their story to really take it where it wants to go. Um, and the other thing I brought up is agency. So when you've got stuff happening and you're really focused on the plot and you maybe aren't focusing enough on your character arc, writers can lose track of their protagonist's agency. And it's sort of like this happens and this happens and this happens, right? And you need to stop the this and this and this and say, okay, this happened. How is my protagonist going to respond to that thing that happened? And what are all the possibilities for that response? What if my protagonist makes this choice? What if my protagonist makes that choice? Because you've got more than one choice, and it's not always the immediate one that's best for your story. And then follow that through several steps. Okay, action, reaction. Well, if this is my protagonist reaction choice, which is agency, that's going to be a new cause further in the events of the story. So, what's the reaction there? And then keep developing your story that way so that while things do happen to the protagonist, you've got ample opportunities for choice consequence circumstances throughout the plot, which is what ultimately shapes your character's arc and your character's evolution. I'm really stuffy, so
Ah, no, you're
apologies.
good.
I'm like, "Ooh, it's the most I've talked all week."
I like Kristen said, nicey nice. You nailed it on the head. And yes, I had the same problem for a long time and I'm working my way out of that, but I still have to check myself on that one.
Yeah.
All right. Nelson had a question, and I don't know if you saw his first comment. So he says he's an aspiring Portuguese historic novel writer. Okay. And his question is says he's struggling with getting historical facts from costumes. What's the best strategy to do fact checking? And the age is 1900s.
For costuming.
I think you
Um,
could probably broaden that too into how do you do historical fact checking, you know? That's been
Yeah, I
interesting.
mean, it just good old-fashioned research, and I would get off the internet.
Mm.
There are some really good, reliable sources on the internet, including some costume costume as in fashion, not as in like dressing up as other
Hmm.
people. Costume historians who do period techniques for sewing for garment construction and such, and they will do things like wear the period clothing and then explain to you how all the garments are layered and how the natural fibers function when you live without air conditioning and, central heat and things like that. So there are some very good resources online, but you want a trustworthy authority. So academic books. Um, I've got a book called Dressed for the Photographer. It's like a big coffee table type book, and a historian in Wisconsin who specialized in clothing put together all of these archival photographs, and they're just everyday people, not wealthy, not elite, not royalty, right? Um, who, you'd go get your photograph taken for a marriage or because you're going off to fight in this, excuse me, in the Civil War or because, um, and so then she describes, like, we know this is the date, we can see the clothing here, we know this is what. So I don't know, that might be going off into the weeds for you a bit, but I write historical fiction and I have a lot of fun researching their clothing, and when you get a sense from text, from books, especially with academic publishers where you can trust that the research is verified and accurate, then you have a better eye for the things you see online and you can kind of gauge better whether or not somebody like blogging about period fashion is getting it right or is just an amateur sharing their fun, right? Which is great, but not necessarily what you want if you're concerned with period details.
Hmm. Well, and I don't
So, and
know
I hope
based
that
on
was
your,
helpful.
yeah, I don't know based on your comment if you are living in the area where you are basing your book just, set in different times. But I think, if you can visit a museum in your area and see the clothing on display, that also can help a lot. And then, Alita, you've talked before about reading novels that are from that time period too, because then they would address the fashion in a way that was accessible as well, right?
Yeah, so I do read a lot of novels written in the period that I'm writing about. Now, the downside there is just like we do with our contemporary stories is they can not worry too much about fashion. You take a lot of things for granted that your reader is already on the same page, but you might pick up key details that you wouldn't pick up in any other kind of source, which then lends you authority. Another thing I did, if you're able to, is I went to, oh, it's a story from your city. Very cool. So yeah, I would definitely check out any historical buildings, museums. I went to a living history farm. And so you go around and there are different settings and different people reenacting things. So you've got the blacksmith, you've got the milking barn, you've got the kitchen, you've got whatever. And I talked to the reenactors. I'm like, so what are you wearing under your dress? Like, I was taking notes. Like, what order do you put that on? And then, I'm like, you're wearing this big hoop skirt and you're cooking over a fire. And isn't your skirt going to get in the fire? How did women deal with that? And she was like, well, wool is naturally flame retardant. And even in the summer, the skirts were wool. And so you know, that was just a part of it. So you
Yeah.
pick up some cool things from people who are living in those garments and using those tools and those kinds of daily implements. So if you have that sort of resource, I would definitely go talk to people and check it out
Yeah.
with your notebook. They were
Well, and
like,
if you're
"What are
living
you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm a
right,
writer." "Oh."
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if you're living in that area and you can find a museum that speaks to those things, you can often find curators or people who have lived this research and really just want to talk about it and will you'll be able to download a lot of information that way, which would be awesome. Um,
Mhm.
cool. That
Yeah,
was a
and
great
you know
question.
what?
Thank
It
you.
just occurred to me maybe he's writing about 1900s. I was thinking 19th century, so if I was off the mark, I'm sorry.
I think
Yeah.
either way it works. Yeah. How do you go about identifying a character's arc and crafting it into something meaningful to the story? Are you a character first, plot second, plot first, interwoven? How are you creating that character arc to make sure it weaves together in the story?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's something you typically work out together. I mean, some stories have their genesis in plot. They're inspired by ideas about events. What if this happened? And that's what gets our wheels turning. Other stories are inspired by character. The character comes to us first, and it's who is this person? I have to understand this person and where she comes from, right? But whichever genesis, and of course, you could be like, theme, this is the question, meaningful life question I want to explore. So, whatever your genesis, once you get into kind of thinking about the shape of your story, you know that you've got a who, your protagonist, at the heart of it. And this protagonist is going on a journey through a series of what, right? What is going to happen? How is all of this going to play out? And then we have to get into our character's psychology, the motivation, right? The driving desires. And we have to know who our character is at the beginning of the story. And then that begs the question, how is this person going to be different at the end of this journey? Right? So we've got a sense of who, we've got a sense of what, and it's all about change. Story is change. So who are we going to be at the end? Did that answer the question, or have I not gotten there yet?
Sorry, I'm laughing because Kristen, she said, the character comes to me, then just sits on the couch.
Don't you just
As
hate
holding
that?
that laugh in. Yeah, she had a clarifying question. Do you sketch out the arc before you start writing?
I think it's part of the pre-writing development process. So in that sense, yes, because I'm thinking about where I'm starting my story, where I'm heading toward, where I'm ending the story, a few key turning points in the middle, right? And that's going to give me enough of a sense of what's going to happen to think about how this person is most likely going to change and evolve. And then, excuse me, there's, the whole storyboarding process. But sketch is a great word. So, yes, I sketch it out. Does that mean there's a lot of filling in and it can evolve as I get going? Absolutely. But I think having a sketch of it helps you, because I really want you to determine if your story is plot driven, character driven, or theme driven very early in your development process. Because once you do that, you can help yourself stay true to your story's core as you write it while you're drafting, which saves you a lot of dead ends, which saves you a lot of frustration and revision. So,
Hmm.
yes.
Yeah, definitely. That sitting on the couch thing kind of reminds me. I think a lot of my character arc work comes easier once I have gotten my character off the couch in terms of giving them motivation or figuring out what that motivation is and what's driving them to enter the story in the first place. Um, yeah, I don't know that there was a question there, but just that sketching out the character arc thing, I think there's multiple pieces that I have to have in play before I can even get to how they're changing or growing.
Hmm.
So my closing question again has nothing to do with the topic. So it's, what is your favorite thing about being a writing coach or a writing educator?
Mm, working with writers. It's fun. Talking about craft is fun. I love getting to know people and their stories. And, when I get to be the person where a writer just hops on a call and we can start talking. And it's very amusing the way we talk about our stories and these characters, like they're totally real, right? But they're on another planet and there's all this like weird stuff and people are dying and things are, but it's really fun. And then helping writers go from wherever they're at when they start the call or we start the process to and I'm super excited and I can't wait to go write some more because now I've got ideas and I'm all fired up. So that's fun. I like that.
Hmm. It looks like Nelson might have a question coming, so I'm just gonna, yeah, there we go. All right, about updating characters' bio and places so you don't have incorrect information. What do you use? Are you talking about like keeping track of the things that you've created for their information about them and where they're at, like continuity and maintaining that continuity? That's where we're going to go first. And if that's incorrect, then you can update
Right.
that and we'll answer that.
Yeah, I just use Scrivener. So all of my projects are in Scrivener and then my notes, the note card feature. I don't use their little character sketch template. And then, of course, my journals. Um, so, excuse me, it would be great
Yeah,
if
I
I
think.
were. Go ahead, Catherine.
No, yeah. Keeping track of things is a study in figuring out your own version of organization. I also use Scrivener because I really like the software, but if you're unfamiliar with it or you don't like it, that's just one option. I think some people create, things they'll call like story Bibles where they've created things and keep them in with tabs and just so they have access to it. Um, but yeah, you definitely need a system of organization and an ability to fact check yourself. Did I say they were wearing a blue dress or a red dress 3 chapters ago? And we're still, it's sort of a thing. You do need a way to check that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining us even sick,
And
Alida.
my pleasure. It's the most fun I've had all week.
And we'll be back again first Monday of May. Same time, same place. So bring your questions and we'll be excited to chat more writing craft.